Welcome back to my channel, beautiful souls. Today, we're diving into a topic that's so powerful, it might just change the way you see yourself forever. The hidden power of a woman who walks alone. This isn't just about being single or independent, it's about the quiet revolution that happens when a woman chooses herself unapologetically. And trust me, by the end of this, you'll see solitude in a whole new light. Don't forget to hit like if this resonates with you, subscribe for more raw, real talks, and comment below, what's your biggest struggle when it comes to walking alone? Is it fear, society's judgments, or something deeper? Let me know which part of this journey you want me to explore next. Now, let's get into it, because this is the conversation we've been waiting for. Let me take a deep breath and step into this moment with you, because I need you to really hear this, not just with your ears, but with that part of you that's been conditioned to believe being alone is something to apologize for. Picture this, a woman walking down the street by herself. No entourage, no hand to hold. Just her. Now, how does that image make you feel? If there's even a twinge of pity, we need to talk. Because somewhere along the way, we've been sold this idea that a woman alone is a woman waiting for someone to complete her, validate her, give her life meaning. And that, right there, is one of the greatest lies we've ever been told. The truth, solitude isn't your enemy. It's your secret training ground. Think about the most confident women, the ones who walk into rooms and own them without saying a word. What do they all have in common? They've spent time alone, not because they had to, but because they chose to. They understand something critical. You cannot build unshakable self-trust in the noise of other people's opinions. That only happens in the quiet. Here's what happens when you embrace walking alone. First, you stop seeing silence as emptiness and start recognizing it as space to hear your own thoughts without the static of everyone else's expectations. That's where your real voice emerges. Not the one that's been shaped by what you think you should want, but the one that knows what you actually do. Second, you develop what I call emotional muscle. Every time you choose to sit with yourself, whether it's at a dinner table, in a movie theater, or simply living your daily life without leaning on someone else's presence, you're strengthening your ability to stand on your own. And that changes everything. Because when you know you can stand alone, you'll never stay with someone out of fear of being alone. That's how you stop settling. But here's the most beautiful part. When you're comfortable in your own company, you become incredibly selective about who gets access to you. You stop confusing attention with value. You stop mistaking companionship for connection. And that's when the quality of your relationship shifts. People will either rise to meet you where you are, or they'll reveal themselves as not worth your energy. Either way, you win. This isn't about rejecting others. It's about being so secure in yourself that your relationships become choices, not needs. That's the hidden power. No one talks about enough. The woman who walks alone isn't missing out. She's leveling up. And here's your proof. Think back to any major decision you've made while surrounded by voices telling you what to do. Now think of the decisions you've made in moments of true solitude. Which ones felt more authentically you? That's not coincidence. That's your inner compass getting stronger every time you walk alone. So the next time you find yourself hesitating to do something because you'd have to do it solo, Heather, it's traveling, attending an event, or simply spending a Saturday with no plans and no people. I want you to remember, this isn't loneliness. This is you becoming the most powerful version of yourself. Because here's the truth. They're afraid to tell you, the woman comfortable walking alone is the woman no one can ever control. And that changes everything. Let me tell you something that might sting a little at first, but stay with me, because this is where your power truly begins. We live in a world that's constantly telling women to shrink toe, be smaller, quieter, more accommodating, to wait for permission, to apologize for taking up space. And the most dangerous lie of all, that your worth is determined by how much someone else chooses you. But the woman who walks alone, she doesn't wait for permission to exist fully. She doesn't wait for someone else to validate her dreams before she pursues them. She doesn't wait for a partner to complete her before she starts living. She sets the standards for her own life, and that changes everything. Let's break this down because this mindset shift is everything. When you walk alone, not out of necessity, but as a conscious choice, you're sending a message to the universe, but more importantly, to yourself. I am already enough. I don't need someone else to make me matter. That energy is magnetic, is also terrifying to people who benefit from you believing you're incomplete without them. Here's the hard truth. If you don't set the standards for how you'll be treated, the world will set them for you. And I promise you, the world's standards for women are not high enough. The woman who walks alone knows this. She doesn't negotiate her worth. She doesn't beg for scraps of attention or affection. She builds a life so full on her own terms that anyone who wants to join her has to rise to meet her where she is. Think about the relationships in your life, romantic, professional, friendships. How many times have you dimmed your light to make someone else comfortable? How many opportunities have you missed because you were waiting for someone else's approval? The Queen's mindset isn't about arrogance, it's about the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your value isn't up for debate. This plays out in small choices every day. It's saying no to plans that drain you, even if it means going solo. It's refusing to chase people who treat you as an option. It's investing in yourself first, your growth, your peace, your joy, before worrying about whether someone else will approve. And here's what happens when you start operating this way. People either rise to meet you or they remove themselves from your path. Both are wins. The right people will respect your standards. The wrong ones will reveal themselves. Either way, you're no longer wasting time on what doesn't serve you. This isn't about being rigid or closed off. It's about being so secure in your own worth that you don't settle for less than you deserve. The woman who walks alone isn't lonely, she's selective. She knows that a relationship should add to an already fulfilling life, not become the entire reason for it. So ask yourself today, what would it look like to stop waiting for permission? To stop waiting for someone else to validate your dreams before you pursue them? To stop shrinking to make others comfortable? That's the power of the Queen's mindset. You don't wait for someone else to crown you. You place the crown on your own head. And once you do, everything changes. Because when you know your worth, you teach others how to treat you not with words, but with the unshakable way you carry yourself. And that kind of power, it starts with a single step walking alone, head high, knowing you're already complete. Now go claim that energy. The world's been waiting for you to realize how powerful you truly are. Let me ask you something that might feel uncomfortable at first. When was the last time you were truly alone with yourself? Not just physically alone as scrolling through your phone, filling the silence with noise, but really alone. The kind of alone where it's just you and your thoughts. No distractions, no performances, no one to impress. If that question makes you squirm a little, you're not alone, but that's exactly why we need to talk about this. The modern world has convinced us that solitude is something to avoid at all costs. We've turned being alone into a pathology, something to medicate away with endless notifications, constant company, and the desperate need to always be connected. But here's what they don't tell you. Your greatest breakthroughs, your most profound moments of clarity, your deepest well of creativity, they're all waiting for you in those quiet spaces between the noise. The woman who understands this doesn't just tolerate alone time, she craves it because she knows it's where her best self is forged. Think about the last time you had a truly brilliant idea. Where were you? Chances are you weren't in a crowded room surrounded by chatter. You were probably in the shower, or driving, or on a walk. Those rare moments when your mind was free to wander without interruption. That's not coincidence. That's your brain finally getting the space it needs to do its best work. When you walk alone regularly, you're not just passing time, you're creating the conditions for genius to emerge. But this goes much deeper than just productivity. Alone time is where you rebuild yourself after life knocks you down, is where you process pain without an audience. It's where you decide who you want to be when no one's watching. The woman who makes peace with solitude develops an unshakable core because she's done the hard work of getting to know herself, flaws and all, without the filter of other people's opinions. She doesn't just love herself when others love her, she loves herself because she truly knows herself. Let's talk practically about what this looks like. Imagine two versions of yourself. One who's constantly surrounded by people, always performing, always seeking external validation, and another who's comfortable in her own company, who doesn't need constant attention to feel worthwhile. Which version do you think makes better decisions? Which version is less likely to stay in unhealthy relationships out of fear of being alone? Which version has the clarity to pursue what truly matters to her? The answer is obvious, but getting there requires doing the work of being alone. This is especially crucial when it comes to relationships. A woman who's comfortable alone enters relationships from a place of abundance, not lack. She doesn't cling to bad situations because she's terrified of being by herself. She doesn't mold herself to fit what someone else wants. She knows who she is, what she brings to the table, and what she deserves, because she spent time at that table by herself. That's how you avoid settling. That's how you attract people who are worthy of you. Now, I'm not suggesting you need to become a hermit. Human connection is vital, but the quality of your connections improves dramatically when they're choices, not needs. When you can honestly say, I enjoy your company, but I don't need it to feel complete. That's when you start forming relationships based on mutual desire rather than mutual desperation. That's when you stop attracting people who sense your neediness and start attracting people who respect your strength. Here's the beautiful paradox. The more comfortable you become with being alone, the less alone you'll actually feel. Because when you cultivate that relationship with yourself, you'll never truly be lonely again. You'll always have someone who understands you completely, who believes in you unconditionally, who knows exactly what you need, and that someone is you. So start small. Take yourself to dinner. Go to that movie you've been wanting to see. Spend a Saturday with no plans and no people. At first, it might feel awkward, like you're doing something wrong. That's just the conditioning talking. Push through it. What waits on the other side is the most liberating feeling in the world. The knowledge that you are enough, exactly as you are, with or without anyone else's approval. Because here's the truth, they don't tell you. The woman who's comfortable alone holds all the power. She's not waiting for life to happen to her, she's happening to life. And that changes everything. Let me share with you one of the most counterintuitive truths about human connection. The less you need someone, the more they'll want you. It sounds backwards, doesn't it? We're taught that to be loved, we must chase, we must prove our worth, we must make ourselves indispensable. But the woman who walks alone understands something far more powerful, that true magnetism comes from a place of wholeness, not hunger. Picture two women at a party. One is scanning the room anxiously, laughing a little too loud at jokes, subtly adjusting herself to fit into conversations. The other is perfectly content, sipping her drink, engaged when spoken to, but equally at ease in the silence. Which one intrigues you? Which one makes you wonder what she knows that everyone else doesn't? That's the magnetic effect in action. It's not about playing hard to get, it's about being hard to disturb, because your sense of worth isn't up for negotiation. This principle transforms every relationship in your life. When you walk alone by choice, you emit a quiet confidence that changes how the world responds to you. Colleagues start seeking your opinion not because you demanded it, but because your calm self-assurance suggests you have something valuable to say. Romantic interests pursue you not because you've made yourself available at their every whim, but because your independence makes them want to earn your time. Friends value your presence more because they know when you're with them, it's by choice, not necessity. Let's break down why this works on a psychological level. People can sense neediness the way animals sense fear. It's not conscious, we're wired to detect subtle cues of insecurity. When you're comfortable alone, you unconsciously communicate that you're a person of value. You're not waiting for someone else to validate your existence. That kind of self-contained energy is irresistibly attractive because it promises something rare, a relationship based on desire rather than dependency. This isn't manipulation, it's the natural consequence of developing what I call emotional sovereignty. The woman who walks alone has done the work to separate her self-worth from external validation. She knows who she is, with or without a partner, a promotion, or public recognition. That's why she doesn't cling. That's why she doesn't panic when someone pulls away. And paradoxically, that's exactly what makes people want to stay close. Think about the most compelling people you've ever met. They weren't necessarily the most beautiful or the most successful by conventional standards. They were the ones who seemed completely at home in their own skin, the ones who didn't need your approval to feel good about themselves. That's the secret you're uncovering when you embrace walking alone, how to be that person for yourself first, so you can attract people who appreciate that quality rather than exploit your insecurities. Now, this doesn't mean becoming cold or detached. Warmth is beautiful. Generosity is powerful. But there's a world of difference between giving love because your cup is overflowing and giving love because you're hoping someone will finally fill your cup. The first is magnetic. The second is draining. Walking alone teaches you how to keep your cup full. So what you give to others is a gift, not a transaction. Here's how this plays out in everyday life. That text you're tempted to send to someone who's been ignoring you. The woman who walks alone doesn't send it not because she's playing games, but because she refuses to beg for attention she deserves freely. That job where you're constantly overextending yourself hoping for recognition, she does excellent work, but her sense of value isn't tied to their approval. That friendship where you're always the one reaching out, she matches energy rather than chasing connection. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It starts with small acts of self-respect that accumulate into unshakable confidence. It begins the moment you choose yourself first, not in a selfish way, but in a way that says, I matter too. With each choice to walk alone, literally and metaphorically, you reinforce to yourself and the world that your presence is a privilege, not a given. The beautiful irony? The more you embrace this mindset, the more you'll find people rising to meet you where you are. Not everyone, and that's the point. But the right people will recognize and respect your energy. They'll want to be part of your world because you've made it clear it's a world worth being part of. So the next time you hesitate to do something alone, whether it's attending an event, traveling, or simply spending a quiet evening with yourself, remember, you're not missing out on connection. You're building the kind of self-assurance that makes genuine connection possible. You're becoming the woman who doesn't chase love, approval, or validation because you already carry those things within you. And that, more than anything else, is what makes the world want to lean in. Because here's the truth, they don't teach you. Neediness repels, wholeness attracts. And the quickest way to become whole is to learn how to walk alone, not away from the world, but toward the best version of yourself. And that version, she's absolutely magnetic. Let me tell you about the most powerful form of resistance that exists. The kind that doesn't require shouting, doesn't need a protest sign, and won't ever make headlines. It happens in the quiet moments when a woman looks at what the world is offering her and simply says no thank you by walking away. That's the silent rejection we need to talk about because it's changing lives while no one's even noticing. Every time you choose to walk alone rather than tolerate half-hearted love, you're staging a revolution. When you opt for your own company over being someone's backup plan, you're rewriting ancient rules that said women should be grateful for scraps. That restaurant table for one, that's your throne. That empty space in your bed where someone unreliable used to be, that's sacred ground you're reclaiming. These aren't small acts. They're seismic shifts disguised as ordinary choices. Here's what they don't teach you about saying no. It's not about the person or situation you're rejecting. It's about what you're saying yes to in yourself. The woman comfortable walking alone has drawn invisible boundaries around her time, energy, and affection that filter out what doesn't deserve her. She doesn't announce these boundaries, she lives them. And the amazing thing, people learn how to treat her not through lectures, but through consistent action. She teaches by example what she'll accept and what she won't. Let's get brutally honest about why this is so hard. We've been conditioned to believe that a woman alone is a woman failing, that empty chairs beside us should fill us with shame rather than pride, that it's better to be poorly accompanied than courageously solo. These lies keep us trapped in situations that drain our light. But when you start walking alone, truly alone, not lonely, but sovereign, you break that conditioning one step at a time, and suddenly, what once felt like rejection becomes your greatest protection. Think about the last time you tolerated less than you deserved. Maybe it was the friend who only calls when she needs something, the date who couldn't be bothered to plan anything thoughtful, the job that took everything and gave little back. Now imagine if you'd walked away the first time they showed you who they were. Imagine all that time and energy you'd have reclaimed. That's the power you hold when you make peace with walking alone, the power to redirect your life toward what actually deserves you. This isn't about being harsh or closing your heart. It's about being so in tune with your worth that what doesn't serve you naturally falls away, like a tree shedding dead leaves to make room for new growth. The woman who walks alone understands that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to stop allowing what should have ended long ago. Here's how this shows up in everyday life. That text you keep drafting to someone who's made it clear they don't value you, delete it. That event you dread attending full of people who drain you, stay home. That compromise that asks you to shrink your dreams, don't make it. These aren't acts of bitterness. They're acts of self-respect, so quiet they're almost secret. But their impact, monumental. What's fascinating is how the world responds when you start practicing this quiet rejection. Some people will surprise you by rising to meet your standards. Others will disappear from your life entirely. Both outcomes are victories, because the space created by what leaves gets filled with what belongs, opportunities that excite you, relationships that nourish you, a life that feels authentically yours. The magic lies in understanding that every time you choose yourself, really choose yourself, you're not missing out on anything worth having. The right people, the right opportunities, the right love, none of it requires you to abandon yourself in the process. In fact, it's only when you stop bending that what's meant for you can finally find you standing tall. So the next time you're tempted to tolerate what you know in your gut isn't right, ask yourself, what would the version of me who loves herself completely do? Then do that. Even if it means walking alone for a while, even if it scares you, even if no one understands. Because on the other side of that fear is a freedom so delicious it makes every hard choice worth it. Remember this, the most powerful no you'll ever say isn't spoken aloud. It's whispered through the life you refuse to settle for anymore. And that whisper, it shakes foundations. Let me tell you a secret about leadership that no one talks about. Real change doesn't start with crowds or spotlights or viral moments. It starts with a single woman making a choice that feels too quiet to matter until it echoes in ways she never expected. When you walk alone, not in spite of your sisters, but for them, you become living proof that there's another way to exist. And that's how movements begin. Think about the women who've inspired you most in your life. I'll bet they weren't the ones who blindly followed the rules. They were the ones who dared to eat alone in restaurants before it was normal. The ones who traveled solo when people said it wasn't safe. The ones who stayed single until something real came along, even when the world called them picky. Their courage wasn't loud, it was persistent. And because they walked alone first, they made the path wider for you. Now it's your turn to widen it further. Here's the beautiful math of this. Every time you choose solitude over settling, you're not just changing your own life, you're shifting the collective expectation for all women. That coworker who sees you leave happy hour early because you respect your own energy, she'll remember. That younger cousin who notices you're not desperate for a boyfriend, she's internalizing that. The friends who witness you walk away from what doesn't serve you, they're gathering courage to do the same. Your solitude becomes their permission slip. This isn't about being perfect or having it all figured out. It's about showing up as proof that a woman's worth isn't determined by who loves her, but by how she loves herself first. When you stop apologizing for taking up space alone, You give other women the vocabulary to claim their space too. They might not tell you, but they're watching, they're learning. And one day, they'll do what you did because you showed them it was possible. Let's get practical about how this ripple effect works. Imagine two scenarios. In the first, you stay in a lukewarm relationship because you're afraid of being alone. Your friends see this. They absorb the message that any love is better than none. Now imagine the alternative: you walk away, spend time rebuilding yourself, and eventually find something real. Your same friends witness that too. Which lesson do you think serves them better? Your choices are never just about you. They're case studies for every woman in your orbit. This is especially powerful for the next generation. Little girls don't need more fairy tales about being rescued. They need living examples of women who rescue themselves. When you're comfortable in your own skin without external validation, you become the mirror they can't unsee. You prove that a woman's happiness isn't something to be given by others, it's something she creates for herself. And that lesson, it's more valuable than any advice you could ever preach. But here's what's equally important. This isn't about shaming women who aren't there yet. We've all settled at some point. We've all feared loneliness more than we should. The sisterhood isn't built on judgment, it's built on showing what's possible. When you walk alone with your head high, you're not saying this is how all women should live. You're simply proving this is how one woman can. And that distinction makes all the difference. Now let's talk about the quiet rebellion in everyday moments. It's in the way you don't laugh at jokes that demean women even when others do. It's in refusing to downplay your success so others feel comfortable. It's in spending Saturday night with a book instead of a bad date just to keep up appearances. These seem like small stands until enough women make them. Then they become cultural earthquakes. The most extraordinary part? You don't have to set out to inspire anyone. In fact, the most powerful role models rarely do. They're just being themselves fully, unapologetically, and the authenticity becomes the spark that lights other fires. Your job isn't to convince other women to walk alone. Your job is to walk your path so joyfully that they start wondering why they're still standing still. So the next time you hesitate to do something alone, whether it's traveling, changing careers, or simply existing unpartnered, remember, your courage is never just yours. It's borrowed by every woman who sees you and thinks, if she can, maybe I can too. That's how we change the world, not by shouting into megaphones, but by living as if we're already free. Because here's the truth about walking alone that no one tells you: it's never really solitary. You're carrying every woman who will come after you in your footsteps. And those footsteps, they're carving a path that will one day be so well worn, no one will remember it was ever brave. Now go be the kind of woman who makes solitude look so inviting, others can't help but follow. The revolution will thank you for it. If this message resonated with you, if you felt something shift inside as we talked about the power of walking alone, then do me a favor. Hit that like button because algorithms are ruthless and your support helps this reach more women who need to hear it. Drop a comment below, tell me, what's your biggest takeaway? Is it the quiet rejection of what doesn't serve you, the magnetic confidence of solitude, or just the relief of knowing you don't have to apologize for choosing yourself? I read every single one. And if you're not already part of this tribe, subscribe because we're just getting started. There are so many more raw, real conversations to have about owning your power, and I don't want you to miss a single one. Remember, the woman who walks alone changes everything, starting with herself. Now go shine, and I'll see you in the comments.